Pinky breathed heavily in and out as she lay on her beach towel. Her dream had seemed so real, so vivid, yet it was just a dream. Nothing more, nothing less. Besides, it wasn't as if this wasn't common for Pinky. Her imagination would run so wild, it would come up with all sorts of scary things. Pinky would constantly have nightmares about things like the boogeyman and creepy ghosts. But this time, it was different. Pinky didn't feel as if she were the one making this up. This dream wasn't just inside of her head. She wasn't in control anymore. And although she tried to convince herself that everything was a dream, Pinky felt a sharp stab of fear she had previously felt while falling in the dream. Pinky had felt as if she had an icicle piercing her coat. It felt as if its cold and sharpness was running through her entire body. It seemed as if the icicle was in her blood, coursing through her veins, through her entire being. This feeling had only happened once before, back when she was living on the farm as a filly. It started when she was first created her magical friends. Not only did Pinky create those friends for company, Pinky liked to pretend that she put all of her sorrows into them when she created them. Although it did help her rid some of her sadness, there was still some sadness that clung on, like the few pieces of her mane that refused to be brushed down with the rest of her mane. Neither wanted to move. Thinking of this past pain, something struck Pinky. She felt it in the back of her mind, and she could remember the day like it was yesterday. After the death of her sister, it seemed as if Pinky was getting more and more depressed by the minute. One sad, depressing morning, she had looked in a mirror to brush her mane, when she saw a reflection of herself. The reflection scared her at first, as it was a twisted reflection of Pinky herself. The reflection constantly chased Pinky, and it had always muttered about control, control. But eventually, the reflection caught up to Pinky and explained that she wanted to control Pinky's sadness and to make her feel better. Now that everything was explained, Pinky slowly warmed up to the reflection, although she always felt a bit uneasy around her. But Pinky shook this feeling off, since the reflection told her that it could take away the pain. What happened next was hazy, and Pinky couldn't remember what had happened. All she remembered was that she woke up, and that she had felt as though a huge weight had been lifted off of her shoulders. She felt free for the first time in what seemed like months. It was as if a chain had been lifted off her hooves and thrown away forever. And then, to top her happiness off, she had gotten her cutie mark that day. As a sign of her happiness, her mane went from a limp clump of hair to a poofy, lively bundle of mane. Whatever had been dragging her, or her hair, down, was gone. She felt carefree, so carefree and happy that she didn't even put up a fight that night when she went to sleep at 8. She was about to go to sleep when she heard a faint crying coming from her mirror, and there it was, her reflection, her savior, her friend, crying. Pinky remembered rushing over to the reflection, asking what was wrong. Pinky once again shook off the uneasy feeling that was churning in her gut. After shaking off the feeling, the reflection had replied with "everything" in answer to her question. The reflection said that it was happy that it had taken Pinky's weight off of her, but now all she consisted of was sadness. Pinky felt so responsible, yet she didn't know what to do. After some thinking, the reflection had requested a deal. She would continue to be Pinky's sadness, if Pinky agreed to give up her happiness at night. Pinky agreed, thinking nothing could go wrong. The only downside to the deal was the constant nightmares about her reflection, which resembled the nightmare Pinky had had today. Pinky remembered when she moved to Ponyville. She was still having those nightmares, as she was still giving her happiness at night. She was growing tired of the constant sweat on her face, the terror in her mind. Since she didn't want to visit any therapists or psychologists, Pinkie Pie decided to talk to her good friend Applejack about her nightmares. Since Applejack was a practical pony, she didn't believe Pinkie when she said her dreams were real. Applejack had said that Pinky was just imagining this reflection, and no matter how real everything seemed, the reflection could never hurt or get to her. The reflection was probably just the aftermath of one of Pinky's fears anyway. Applejack had offered some great advice about not feeding the nightmare or her fear, and Pinky put the idea into action. She ignored the sobs and the soft whispers at night, and they eventually disappeared. After they disappeared, Pinky woke up with a sudden weight on her chest, and she figured that since the contract was broken, she had to be sad now. Since it had been so long, Pinky didn't know how to deal with these negative feelings. She would hold in her sadness and anger until she burst. Pinky was always like a glass piece. One little nudge, and she would fall to the ground and break. When she was nudged, Pinky would lose all the happiness that she once had, and she would either become depressed, extremely angry, or crazy. She only snapped out when some pony was there to remind her that she had beaten the reflection. That she could gain herself, gain her happiness, and have control once more. The reflection Pinky saw as a filly had to be the same reflection she saw today. It couldn't just be a coincidence. Pinky had felt the same as before, and she had seen the same things too. But why would it come back now? Revenge? Was she mad Pinky hadn't been nudged at all in a long time? Did she want her happiness back? Pinky didn't know if she could live with that. All those thoughts were worrying Pinky, and she had no idea how to get rid of them. It was as if they were controlling her mind, and she couldn't stop them. The only thing Pinky could think to do at the moment was go to a friend who had been there for her. The one who understood. The one who didn't say to get professional help. The one who helped her during the times when the reflection was controlling her. With that decided, Pinkie Pie headed towards Sweet Apple Acres. Pinkie quickly galloped towards the shelter of Applejack's barn. The sun that had earlier shone that day was now hidden behind clouds, and little droplets of rain had soaked Pinkie's shivering backside and mane. She knocked on the barn door with all her might, desperate to gain the attention of one of the country folk so she could be let in, into a dry place. Luckily, Applejack came to her aid. After glancing at her soaking, freezing friend, Applejack rushed Pinkie inside and got her a nice fluffy towel from another room. "Why, Pinkie, you're all absolutely soaked. Why'd you go outside during a doozy like this for?" Pinkie shivered in response, and Applejack brought her a warm cup of cocoa. When she was warmed up, Pinkie gazed fearfully into Applejack's eyes. Applejack, I had a nightmare, and I haven't had one in a long time, but it seemed to come back, and I don't know what to do, because it feels me and I scare, and Applejack cut Pinkie off with a curt stomp of her hoof. "Pinkie, slow down, would you? I can't keep up with all your fast-talking Pinkie language." Pinkie blinked, then realized that she had slipped into fast mode with her voice. It happened whenever she was scared or nervous. Really scared or nervous. Sorry, Applejack. I'll slow down. So you see, Pinkie told Applejack all about the nightmare and how it resembled the nightmares she used to talk to her friend about. Throughout the story, Applejack nodded her head, or at rare times shook her head as if it was all nonsense. When she had finished, Applejack looked Pinkie straight in her bright blue eyes. It was the most serious gaze Applejack had ever given Pinkie. Normally, her serious gaze held a twinkle beneath the gaze itself, but this gaze, this serious gaze, was hollow. Nothing but an honest, sober look met Pinkie's gaze. Applejack sighed and opened her mouth. She closed it shortly after, as if struggling to find the words. For a short while, Applejack struggled to find words for Pinkie's dilemma. It was as if she could open the book of words, but she could not read a single one. Finally, Applejack let out another exasperated sigh and opened her mouth. "Pinkie, y'all know this isn't real. They're just dreams, is all. Maybe, I don't know. Something happened. Something made this nightmare come back. But I know y'all can make this nightmare go away. You've done it before, Pinky, and just try and forget about it for now. It'll go away eventually. Just use that happiness you have to counter that negativity. But for now, since it's raining hard, why don't you stay for dinner? Trust me, no nightmare will dare enter this house. Not while I'm around, Applejack declared. Pinky looked up at her for a hint of laughter or humor, but she found none. All of Applejack's words were honest sincerity. Thanks, Applejack. I appreciate it. A lot. Like, really a lot. I mean, this is the nicest, bestest, awesomest thing you've ever done for me. It's so great. Hey, maybe we can throw a party. Applejack laughed and shook her head. That's all right, Pinky. This is just what friends do for each other. Now, would y'all like to help out with dinner? Applejack said, her eyes and mouth still smiling. Of course. Why wouldn't I? This is going to be so much fun. Pinky went on and on as she and Applejack trotted over to the kitchen. After making and eating dinner with the apples, Pinky was exhausted. Fun could be tiring. Pinky said her goodbyes, gave her hugs, gave even more hugs, even with the protest from Applejack, and then trotted home. Miss Cake said she was so happy to see Pinky smiling and being herself again, and Pinky promised to work super-duper hard the next day. After making Miss Cake Pinky promise that she wouldn't pay Pinky extra for getting up early for work, she trotted to her room, satisfied. Pinky threw on her pajamas and hopped into her bright pink bed. She closed her eyes and started counting out gummies, her pet alligator, in her head to help her go to sleep. Pinky was drifting off when a soft sound pierced the dead quiet in the room. It was sniffling. Soft, faint sniffling. Though the sound sent a shiver down her spine, Pinky didn't like to see or hear any pony unhappy. Pinky trotted closer and closer towards the sound, the fear in her gut growing. Though she knew she would turn away and go to sleep, some invisible force, pulled Pinky nearer and nearer to the sound. When the sound got louder, Pinky suddenly turned towards the mirror. Standing there, in the mirror, crying, was Pinky's twisted reflection. The reflection looked at Pinky, sorrow and anger in its eyes. Studying it, Pinky knew there was something else in the reflection's eyes, but she couldn't place her hoof on it. Suddenly, the reflection locked eyes with the bright pink, trembling mare. In a voice as cold as ice, as breakable as glass, the reflection said, "You broke our promise, Pinky, and now you must pay." At that moment, all the happiness drained from Pinky's body. She was nothing, falling into a deep, dark pit once more. The only thing she felt was stabbing, cold pain. "Help!" Pinky whispered desperately, but the reflection just stared down at her sadly. "No,"